Welcome to Advanblack's YouTube channel. I'm Steve, the service technician for Advanblack, and today I'm going to be showing you how to install our brand new 21-inch Blazer front wheel. Now this is a 21 by 3.5 inch cast wheel, and you can get this in several different flavors. On the table back here we've got the all black wheel. You can get this black with contrast cut on these edges. You can get this with black and red, black and blue, black and orange. And I'll throw a picture up here on the screen so you can see the different wheels that we have to offer. And as of right now we just have the front wheel. So if you're looking to upgrade from your stock front wheel from a 19-inch to a 21, this is definitely a viable option for you. A couple of things that I need to talk to you about before we do the install. Now this will fit an 09 to 23 touring motorcycle, and you'll have to go in there and select which bearings that you want. It's 09 to 23, but it's going to be ABS or non-ABS. So at this time we are just offering the wheel and the wheel components, which we'll cover all that here in just a minute, but you will have to go have a tire put on it. Depending on what bearings you select, those will be in a box as well. So the best thing to do is get all of this stuff together, take it to either Harley-Davidson or your local indie shop and have them build the wheel for you, and then you can bring it back and put it on the bike. You will get, of course, the wheel. You'll get the ABS or non-ABS depending on which one you select. You'll get those bearings. You'll get the bearing spacer that goes in the middle, and you will get the valve stem. When it comes to the rotors, there are basically two styles of rotors. There are aftermarket rotors like this that fit directly to the wheel, and then there are also the rotors that come on the Harley-Davidson touring motorcycle. It's called a floating rotor, but if you want to use the OEM floating rotors, you will have to purchase the adapter separately. Our adapters do come with bolts to install the adapters to the wheel. Today we're going to be taking those floating rotors off the OEM wheel. We're going to be using the adapters, and we're going to be installing those rotors on the adapters onto this wheel. Now, when I pull those floating rotor bolts out of there, they're one-time use only because they have a lot of stress on them. So once you pull them, they're pretty much garbage. Now we've got our wheel in, we've taken it up to Harley-Davidson. They've pressed our bearings in, put our bearing spacer in, they installed our valve stem, and they threw us on a tire. So now we're ready to get it installed on the bike. If you're wanting to run your stock fender with a 21-inch wheel, your stock fender right now is on a 19-inch wheel. It will fit on the 21, however, it needs to go up a little bit. So your best option is to get 1-inch risers. We got a set of black ones that are going on this bike today because we're going to put the stock fender back on with this 21, and I'll show you how to use those risers. Now the fenders are different between 09 and 13 and 14 and newer. The 09 and 13, the fenders just simply have holes in them, and they have bolts with a nut on the inside. So you can technically kind of waller out the rear holes and tilt your fender and all that good stuff. You've probably read about it in the forums. It's not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is go ahead and get the 1-inch fender risers and lift the fender up. On the 2014 and newer bikes, that nut is actually welded to the inside of the fender. So you can no longer just kind of waller out that rear hole and then tilt your fender to make it fit. On 2014 and newer, you absolutely have to have the 1-inch fender risers if you want to run the 19-inch fender with a 21-inch wheel. Now we do sell color matched 21-inch wrapper front fenders for these bikes as well, so that's probably going to be your best option. What's good about the 21-inch wrapper front fenders is they actually show off the wheel a lot better. So if you're spending money getting a new wheel, get yourself a wrapper fender and actually show off the whole wheel. The stock fenders on the bike have a big piece of metal that go across. This part right here is pretty flat, and then it kind of tapers down, cuts off quite a bit of your wheel. So a common upgrade to go with a 21-inch wheel is a 21-inch wrapper fender. So today we're going to be putting this all black wheel on the 2022 Road Glide ST over here. So let's get the camera over here, get the bike up in the air, and get this front wheel off. So it really is just a few steps to get your front wheel off your bike. So there really is just a few steps on taking your front wheel and your front fender off. Before we get started on removing that caliper, I want to get this socket up here on the camera so you can see it. This is a 12-point socket. If you have a standard 6-sided socket, it will not work on these calipers. These are really generally the only 2 bolts on most of the touring models that use that 12-point style. Like I said, it is important to use that. We're going to grab a short extension so we make sure that we stay away from the forks. We're going to bust these 2 bolts right here loose. This holds your caliper on. Hang on to your caliper when you pull the back one. And I just use a piece of scrap red wire laying around. You can use anything. We're going to tie that off to the caliper bolt. We're going to pull this back to the engine guard. We're going to take the weight off of that brake line. And we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. We have to be super careful with this ABS wire because, like I said, this is connected down here to a spacer. So we're going to take our 15/16, we're going to bust this front axle loose. Gonna go ahead and pull that nut and washer. Now we're going to use our jack to get our wheel to just barely touch the lift. If you're doing this on a floor jack at home, do the same thing. Just get it to barely touch the floor. So I just usually spin it till it hits, go down just a little bit more, and that's going to take a lot of the weight off of this axle. Before you pull your wheel, make sure to look at your axle spacer in here. As you can see, it does have 2 lines on it right here. The lines are closest to the fork, so this has to go back on exactly like this. So make a mental note of where your spacer lines are. And then you have this spacer, which is actually your ABS sensor. Right here on the bottom of the fork, you're gonna have a 6mm pinch bolt. So we're gonna take this out. Now, if we've got our jack set correctly, we can tap on that axle and you'll see it moved really freely. If it's still tight, go ahead and adjust your jack until that moves pretty easily. We're gonna tap that so we can come to this side, and we've got more to grip onto on this side. We're just gonna pull this axle straight out. You can kind of jog the wheel just a little bit to get the spacers out. Get the left side out. Now I'm going to jog it back the other way, and there's our ABS spacer. Now the wheel is free in here, but we're going to go ahead and remove the fender to make it easier to get out. Going to take our 1/4 inch Allen and bust these loose. We're just going to hang on to the fender till we take this last bolt out. And now we should be able to roll this fender up and out. We'll go ahead and roll the wheel out and get it over to our soft table. We're going to take a Torx 40 and a small breaker bar. And we're going to go ahead and break these loose. Now when you pull these out, you'll see a wafer washer on the back side. You can see that that's not a flat washer. And then you have this insert and then your bolt. So make sure to keep these. But we're going to be replacing these with new ones. So we just want to go ahead and get these out. Go ahead and take our rotor off. Torx 40 again. So now that we have the wheel up here, you can see the OEM brake rotor, how that doesn't work unless you have the adapters. Now, like I said, some brake rotors go all the way in and will actually bolt straight to this. But if you want to run OEM brake rotors, that's fine. You're just going to take your adapter, set it on there, line it up with the holes. We're going to grab some medium strength Loctite and go ahead and get those started. We're going to go ahead and run these in a star pattern. 16 to 22 foot-pounds on these. Get our brake rotor. I'm going to lay it up here. So we're going to take our new bolts from the kit. We're going to put it through our wafer washer. Remember, it's very important to put that on there. The regular thick washer and then the bolt. Now, this thick washer has to set in that hole. So we're going to start this, we're going to thread this in. It's easy to catch this on the edge of the lip like that and try to bolt it down. This has to drop down in the hole. So it's important to make sure that you watch those washers as you're putting them in. We're going to use a little blue Loctite again. Going to get these started. Get the wafer washer lined up. See how it's not setting in the hole right there? So we need to address that before we tighten this down. Start this bolt, try to get this to drop straight down into the hole. Now we're in there. So it's important to take your time to make sure that you get that right. And we're going to go ahead and put all 5 of these in, making sure that it sets in the hole, just like that. And once we get them all ran in, we're going to torque these down to 16 to 24 foot-pounds. So you get the idea there. All 5 of them, 16 to 24 foot-pounds. So I've just repeated the process on the other side of the wheel. Everything is exactly the same on both sides of the wheel. So like I said before, you're going to look somewhere on the sidewall of your tire. All tires have them. It's going to show you the rotation of the wheel. So we need to make sure that this is facing the front. Going to roll our wheel into place. Unless you have a brand new bike like this one, this is the amount of anti-seize that you need on the axle. You can see it is not a ton. If your bike's a little bit older and you're doing this, go ahead and wipe that old anti-seize off. I'm gonna do it like this. Just get an old towel. Make sure that you wear a glove when you're spreading the new anti-seize on, because that stuff goes into your skin and it's just not good for you. We're going to take a little bit of anti-seize. By all means, you do not need a huge tube like this. We just use a lot of this, so we buy it in bulk. But you're going to put a line across that axle like that. Take a glove. Get a nice even coat across the whole axle, making sure that you stay off the threads. If you get some on the threads, no big deal, just wipe it off, and that's ready to go back in the bike. So then we're going to take our spacer, making sure that the lines are facing out just like they were when we took it off. We're going to sneak that in there, go ahead and pull that up into place, and you can kind of see from there where you are on your wheel. We come over to this side and I can see it's a little bit high on this side, so I'm just going to bring it down until it just about lines up with the hole. We're going to take our ABS spacer. Remember, this metal part was out. You notice there's a little nipple right here on the back side. When you put this in, you have to roll this up until this hits the back side of the fork. This can't be down like this. The little nipple's there for a reason. So we're going to put it in, slide our axle through. We're going to roll this up into place, make sure it hits, and then put our nut and washer on. This one pushed up into place. Go ahead and poke our axle through. And then you can see how this wire, this can move now. Naturally kind of wants to pull up because of the tension on this right now. But you have to make sure that that nipple is up hitting the back side of the fork. Once you do that, you can go ahead and start this while you're here. Don't tighten it down. From here, we're going to go ahead and put our pinch bolt back in. And that's going to be torqued 18 to 22 foot-pounds. Now from here, we're ready to tighten down our axle nut, 70 to 75 foot-pounds. So we have this little bracket here that holds our wire up into place for our ABS. This may be flipped around, whatever. Go ahead and flip that back up into place. It's going to go right there with your brake caliper. So we're going to untie our brake caliper. Going to go ahead and sneak our caliper back over the rotor. Get it into place. We're going to flip this up, get that into place. Brand new, little bit of blue Loctite on these bolts as you put them back in. 12.10 millimeter again. 28 to 38 foot-pounds on these two bolts. Now we repeat that process on the other side. So one thing I want to show you real quick, we do have our fender risers on for a 21-inch wheel to run with an OEM fender. If you look at this fender, this is a Road Glide ST. So the ST fender is clearly different than a OEM fender on a Street Glide or a Road Glide or Road King. It's a little bit shorter in the front and in the rear. And what we also noticed as we were installing this, that the fender did not raise up enough off of the tire to run this style fender with any 21. But like I said, this fender is completely different than a standard fender. So if you have a Road Glide or a Street Glide ST with this style fender on it, the fender risers will not work. You would have to go to a 21-inch hugger front fender to eliminate this issue. This is a standard 21-inch riser bracket, so you can run an OEM fender, but with this style fender, it does not work. But if you're using an OEM fender and you want to go ahead and raise it up, but if you're using a standard OEM fender that's not on an ST model, you can use the bracket. You're going to torque all of these down to 16 to 20 foot-pounds. So that's it. Like I said, pretty easy install. Definitely something that you can do at home. I gave you all the torque specs so you can do this properly. That is the Advanblack Blazer 21-inch front wheel. Like I said, you can get it in all black like that. You can get it in black contrast cut, black blue, black red, and black orange. So make sure to check out the website. If you want to get your hands on one of these, I'll put a link down in the description down below. You can click that 3 days after the release of this video. For the first 3 days, you can purchase it through an authorized dealer. So I'm going to get out of here and get myself back to work. I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, as always, be safe, keep your knees in the breeze.